Have you ever noticed how, even though we all know that we shouldn't procrastinate, it still happens to us all the time? You may be someone who doesn't procrastinate very often, but even for people like that, it can still happen from time to time. So today, let's discuss why we procrastinate and how to stop doing it. First, let's figure out why we do procrastinate in the first place. The first reason is simply because tasks are boring. Think about it. When you have to complete something that's really boring, your mind will try to avoid doing it at all costs. And if you don't have any self-control, your mind will succeed. For example, let's say you have to reorganize your files and folders on your computer. This sounds pretty boring, so you might start doing it tomorrow or maybe the next day, or maybe just not do it at all. And this applies to studying as well. If a certain subject is particularly boring to you, you might put off studying that subject for another day. A good way to overcome this issue is by trying to find ways to make the task more fun or at least less boring. With the computer file example, you could listen to some music while doing it. And with studying, you could try explaining the concepts that you're learning to someone else. Even if there's no one around you, you could just pretend that there's someone there and explain the concepts out loud. This method is actually used in many schools of education and has been proven to be effective. By explaining concepts to others, you'll be able to understand them better. So this is a win-win situation. The second reason why we procrastinate is because the task is too difficult. Imagine you're a writer who has to write an essay. You've written many essays before, but this one seems to be harder than the rest. After writing a few sentences, you realize that you don't know much about the topic, and you don't have enough evidence to support your arguments. In situations like this, our brains get scared. It doesn't want to admit that we might not be able to complete the task successfully, so it tries to escape and trick us into thinking about something else. Now, if you're the type of person who gets scared easily, you'll probably procrastinate more often. The best way to overcome this problem is to train yourself to become less emotional. Basically, whenever you feel negative emotions during a task, practice identifying those emotions and then letting them go. This isn't easy to do, but it's possible with practice. The third reason why we procrastinate is because the task is too easy. Believe it or not, this is a real thing. Some people will procrastinate when the tasks are too easy, because they do want to have anything to challenge themselves with. They need some sort of challenge to push themselves. And if there aren't any challenges, they won't perform optimally. This might sound like a first world problem, but trust me, this happens to a lot of people. You see, the brain works just like a muscle. If you don't use it, it gets weaker. But if you push it too much, it'll grow. So if you're someone who constantly does easy tasks, you'll get bored and start procrastinating. But if you constantly do difficult tasks, you'll push yourself and achieve great things. Now the question is, how do you know which tasks are too easy for you? Well, a good rule of thumb is that if you can complete a task without any struggle, you should increase the difficulty. For example, if you're rereading a book and you're able to read 100 pages per hour without any effort, then you should try to read a more difficult book. It's better to only read books that you can barely understand. In fact, this is a great study method that many high school and college students use. The fourth reason is fear. Fear of failure, fear of success, fear of what other people think. These fears can cause us to procrastinate. To be honest, I can't really tell you how to deal with this because everyone is different. However, I can tell you that the best way to deal with fear is to try to understand it. Think about what it is that scares you so much about a task and try to look at that fear rationally. Is the fear reasonable or is it irrational? The fifth reason is perfectionism. Let's say you're an editor who has to edit a video. You spend hours working on the video, but no matter how much time you spend on it, you never seem to finish it. You always find something that needs to be fixed or improved, and you end up spending days or even weeks on a single video. That's what we call procrastination caused by perfectionism. A good way to deal with this is to remind yourself that nothing is perfect. Everything in life has its pros and cons, so instead of wasting time trying to improve your work, it's better to focus on completing it. Of course, this doesn't mean that you should submit low-quality work, but keep in mind that there's always room for improvement. There's always something that can be improved, so don't spend too much time on a single task. Instead, set a timer for 30 minutes or an hour and try to improve your work within that time frame. The sixth reason is poor time management. Many people believe that if they have a busy schedule, they won't have time to procrastinate. But that's not true. In fact, it's quite the opposite. People with busy schedules are more likely to procrastinate because they have less free time to relax and recharge. So if you want to avoid procrastination, it's important to manage your time wisely. This means that you should learn to say no to things that you do want to do, and that you should prioritize the tasks that are most important to you. The seventh reason is lack of motivation. We all have different motivations for doing things. For some people, their motivation comes from within themselves. For others, their motivation comes from external factors such as rewards or punishments. Whatever your motivation may be, it's important to find ways to keep yourself motivated. One way to do this is to break down your tasks into smaller, more manageable chunks. For example, instead of saying, "I have to clean my room," say, "I have to pick up my clothes off the floor." Once you've completed that task, you can move on to the next one. Another way to stay motivated is to reward yourself when you complete a task. This doesn't have to be anything big. It could be as simple as giving yourself a pat on the back or taking a break. Just make sure that the rewards are meaningful to you. Reason number 8 is lack of sleep. Sleep is important for a lot of reasons. It helps us to restore our mental and physical health, and it helps us to remember things better. When we don't get enough sleep, our brains don't function properly. We become irritable and we have trouble concentrating. All of these things can lead to procrastination, so make sure to get enough sleep. Most people need between 7 and 8 hours of sleep per night. Reason number 9 is not knowing what to do. Sometimes we procrastinate because we don't know where to start. This is especially common when we're faced with tasks that are open-ended. For example, write a paper or clean your room. These tasks require a lot of effort, and we may not be sure how to go about them. If this describes you, then it's important to break down your tasks into smaller, more manageable chunks. This will make them seem less daunting and you'll be more likely to complete them. Reason number 10 is lack of confidence. Sometimes we procrastinate because we don't think we're capable of completing a task. This is especially common when we're faced with tasks that are new or challenging. For example, if you've never written an essay before and you're assigned one, you may procrastinate because you don't think you can do it. In situations like these, it's important to remind yourself that you can do it. You may not be an expert, but you can learn. Start by breaking down the task into smaller chunks and then start working on it. As you complete each chunk, you'll feel more confident and motivated to continue. So these are just a few of the reasons why we procrastinate and how to stop doing it. Keep in mind that everyone is different and what works for one person may not work for another. So if one strategy doesn't work for you, try another one. Just don't give up. Procrastination is a bad habit that everyone has. It's something that we all struggle with, but it's not something that we should accept. If you want to be successful in school, in your career, or in life in general, then you need to learn how to avoid procrastination.